if we cannot open, if we're not able to open markets to the United States, we would have to destroy a portion of their potatoes, and it would be very unfortunate, and nobody wants that.
More than 140,000 tons of Canadian potatoes vanished from U.S. markets in just 4 months. No public statement, no conflict, just gone. Why? On April 2nd, Washington imposed a 35% tariff on Canadian potatoes. Genius move. Now, a $22 bag of spuds costs $30. A $3.50 plate of fries? Try $5.25. While Americans fork over more for lackluster fries, Canada's Prime Minister didn't protest. He jetted to Asia, inked a $1.6 billion trade agreement, and didn't glance back. Warehouses sit empty. Farmers are scaling down. Diners are cutting portions. The reality? The potatoes weren't banned. They just slipped away. When you hit your top trade partner with a hefty tax and label it strategy, don't be shocked when even a spud says, "I'm out." Let's not forget, before this fry fiasco, this was one of North America's steadiest trade streams. In 2024, Canada sent about 350,000 metric tons of potatoes to the U.S., enough to feed 17 million households, especially in northern states where winter outlasts election ads. This wasn't just commerce. It was tradition. Minnesota eateries relied on PI potatoes like Congress leans on lobbyist espresso. For years, the Canada-U.S. potato pipeline was as dependable as Monday Night Football. Then came the tariff masterstroke. Suddenly, the guy in the White House decided taxing your closest agricultural ally was a bold flex. No social media rants, no press conferences, just a 35% tariff slapped on potatoes like they were national security risks. Per Agriculture Canada's July 2025 report, this triggered a 41% plunge in Canadian potato exports to the U.S. by Q2, a nosedive unseen since the 80s. So no, it wasn't a loud split. It was worse, a silent ghosting with a tax stamp. Taxing potatoes like their designer purses was bound to break something. The U.S. government dropped a 35% tariff on all Canadian potatoes, fresh, frozen, seed, you name it. The stated goal? Trade equity. The real impact? Higher prices, bare shelves, and fries from Idaho that just don't cut it. Let's break it down. A 25-ton shipment of frozen fries, once worth $32,000, now carries an extra $11,200 in taxes. That's a 35% hike on a food Americans devour more than broccoli and common sense combined. According to the USDA's July 2025 Food Pricing Index, the cost of a fry serving leapt from $3.50 to $5.25 in 1 quarter. That's not inflation, that's ketchup sabotage. Restaurants are swapping premium PI potatoes for cheaper local ones. Spoiler, they don't crisp up the same. Diners are griping about soggy texture, patchy color, and a weird chemical aftertaste that screams freedom fries. Meanwhile, small diners are quietly shrinking servings and rewriting menus because passing on the full cost means losing customers. Here's the real sting. Nobody gave Canada a heads up. No talks, no timeline, just a sudden tariff wall. When the White House throws up economic barriers without warning, don't be surprised when your neighbor starts using the back door. In this America First saga, even potatoes are questioning their visa status. When one side builds a tariff fortress, the other doesn't always retaliate. Sometimes they just walk away with their crops. Canadian processors like McCain and Cavendish, who once shipped thousands of fry containers to the U.S. monthly, have quietly reduced farmer contracts. No fanfare, just fewer trucks, shorter deals, and empty freezers in Prince Edward Island, New Brunswick, and Alberta. Statistics Canada's July 2025 farm update notes that some mid-sized farms cut planting acreage by 15 to 25% this season, not from drought or pests, but because their biggest buyer, America, stopped calling. On the U.S. side, it's no rosier. Importers, hit with soaring costs, are turning to domestic potatoes despite logistical hiccups and inconsistent quality. The USDA's July 2025 Agricultural Outlook reports that restaurants in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan are seeing 10 to 18% drops in potato product satisfaction. largely due to uneven frying and shorter shelf life. A regular in an Eau Claire, Wisconsin diner put it bluntly, "I paid $5 for fries that tasted like damp cardboard. I used to eat here twice a week. Now I pack my lunch." He's not alone. Midwest fast food spots are seeing fewer customers, not over calorie concerns, but because the fries just aren't the same. "We didn't switch suppliers by choice," a Duluth franchise owner said. "Our Canadian trucks stopped coming. Customers noticed in a week and didn't return." Big chains like McDonald's and Wendy's can swing bulk deals, but small diners and cafeterias are taking the hit. A Fargo restaurant owner told the Minneapolis Star, "We went from 3 plates of fries for $10 to barely 1.5. Our margins didn't shrink, they disappeared." The fallout is real, from idle tractors in PEI to drive-through teens apologizing for subpar fries. This isn't just trade. It's a food system jammed by one quiet D.C. policy decision. While Washington waved its tariff club, Ottawa pulled out a calculator and a map. Instead of counter tariffs or fiery speeches, Canada restructured its potato market. Processors shifted stock to domestic buyers. Farms cut exports, retooled for 5 kilograms retail packs, and began supplying grocery chains and co-ops directly. Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada's July 2025 Food System Review shows retail potato prices in Canada holding steady at $4.50 to $4.99 per bag, dodging the price spike seen in U.S. meat and grain. Quietly, surplus potatoes were redirected to food banks and community kitchens. In New Brunswick and Manitoba, subsidies moved over 12,000 tons of excess crop to low-income food programs in Q2, per Food Banks Canada's July 2025 Impact Report. For a Canadian family, saving $5 weekly on local potatoes means more for milk, eggs, or bread. In today's economy, that's not trivial, it's dinner. All done without drama, threats, or pretending that strong-arming your neighbor earns respect. When your biggest buyer taxes your goods like they're toxic, the smart play isn't begging, it's finding new buyers. Canada's doing just that. Since late 2024, Ottawa has been expanding agricultural trade beyond its temperamental neighbor. Global Affairs Canada's July 2025 Trade Pivot Brief notes a $1.6 billion agri-deal signed this spring with Japan, South Korea, and Indonesia, focusing on processed potatoes and premium frozen goods. The results are tangible. PEI exported $8 million in fresh potatoes to Indonesia in 2024, with shipments growing. Thailand is now Canada's largest non-U.S. importer, buying over $4 million in fresh and seed potatoes, while Caribbean nations like Trinidad and Panama each imported over $13 million. In Charlottetown, a freezing facility signed a Japanese deal, adding a processing line, creating 45 jobs, and boosting local purchases by 15%, including Grade 2 potatoes once used for livestock. This isn't about payback, it's about resilience. Canada learned that banking on a market that tantrums every election cycle isn't business. It's a hostage situation. Asia isn't just opening doors, it's offering a spare key. Still, even with Asia's open doors, Canada's got to finesse the lock. The pivot looks good on paper, but logistics are stubborn. Agriculture Canada's July 2025 Export Logistics Review highlights that Canada lacks direct cold chain routes to major Asian hubs. Shipping to Tokyo or Jakarta costs 20 to 35% more per ton than trucking to Buffalo. South Korea, despite a free trade deal, hasn't greenlit fresh Canadian potatoes due to quarantine rules, so fries are cleared, but raw spuds are stuck at customs. Big players like McCain can build new supply chains, but smaller farms are left in the dust, relying on processors who control which farms ship where and for how much. So, yes, Canada's moving forward, but rebounds are messy. New markets take time, infrastructure takes cash, and not every farmer has the patience or a trade team on speed dial. Diversifying sounds slick until you're the small farmer waiting for a boat that sails once a month. Ultimately, no one called it a trade war. No grand speeches, no boycotts, just tariffs and a retreat. The World Trade Monitor's July 2025 data shows a 41.7% drop in Canadian potato exports to the U.S., with overall U.S. potato imports down 19%, largely due to what economists call policy-induced friction. But this isn't just about exports or fries. It's about trust. Canada didn't slam the door. They just stopped knocking. That's what Washington isn't saying out loud. When your closest trade partner walks away without a fight, it's not defiance, it's exhaustion. The USDA's July 2025 policy impact brief nails it. Short-term protectionism might score political points, but long-term reputational damage is tougher to mend. It's hard to fault Canada when you're called a trusted partner for years, but one political mess gets you taxed like a threat. You stop showing up. Trust doesn't need a loud break. It fades quietly in dark warehouses, deals signed elsewhere, and fries that don't taste like home. What's your take? Will Canada come back to the table, or is this the quietest trade breakup North America's ever seen? Share your thoughts below and subscribe so you don't miss the next time someone taxes trust and calls it strategy.